All right, Michael, you want to go ahead and kick us off?
Sure. Thank you, Robin, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michael Delbar. I'm the CEO of the California Rangeland Trust, and on behalf of our team and our partners at Komodo Fire Systems, we want to welcome you and thank you for being here this afternoon. 27 years ago, the Rangeland Trust was formed by ranchers for ranchers to save rangelands for future generations in California. To date, we've helped 98 ranching families permanently protect over 420,000 acres of private rangelands throughout the Golden State. But these numbers are more than just stats. They represent generations of stewardship and land on the landscapes that are so critical to our state's social, cultural, economic, and environmental well-being. The trust we've built with the ranching community is something that we hold with deep respect. And to honor that trust and to meet the needs of our ranching partners and the broader community, we are committed to doing more than just conservation easement transactions. We are working to be a better resource and a stronger partner to the people we serve. Earlier this year, the Rangeland Trust partnered with Komodo Fire Systems to help connect our landowners and friends in the ranching community to science-backed practical fire mitigation and suppression tools. The formula for their fire system is non-toxic, it's biodegradable, water soluble, and non-hazardous. It can be used to prevent wildfire spread and suppress small fires. It's safe around land, livestock, and family. If you spent any time living or working on the land in the West, you know wildfire is just a seasonal concern. It's a constant and growing threat. In California, it seems like our fire season runs all year round. In 2024, over 1 million acres burned in California alone. Now, that's less than past record-breaking years, but it's not time to relax. Fires are getting more intense, frequent, and unpredictable, fueled by drought, extreme weather, and shifting land conditions. For ranchers and land stewards, the impact is especially severe. Fires destroy homes, livestock. They leave long-lasting damage to forage, soil, water systems, and wildlife. And recovery takes years, not months. On top of that, fire insurance is becoming harder to find and afford. Insurers are pulling out of high-risk areas, premiums are rising to unaffordable levels, and for many, this is more than a challenge, it's a barrier to recovery. That's why today's conversation is so critical. It's about helping you be better prepared and more resilient in the face of California's new reality. The Rangeland Trust and Komodo Fire Systems are proud to partner to bring you today's webinar. We hope it helps to empower you with the knowledge, practical tools, and strategies to protect what matters most to you. Thank you again for being here, and now I'd like to hand it back over to our programs manager, Robin Hanson, to get things started.
Sure. Thank you everyone for joining us. Just a few quick things. If you have questions that come up throughout the presentation, you can put them in our chat and we will address them at the end of that presentation, or we'll have a couple minutes after each speaker is done talking to take a few questions, so you can just jot it down and then ask it then. And contact info for all of our presenters and a recording of this will be emailed out next week, so you can look for that. All right, to kick us off, we have Braden Clark from Interwest Insurance. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Braden, and I'll get your slideshow pulled up here.
Will do. Thank you, Robin. As Robin said, I'm Braden Clark with Interwest. I manage the ag practice group here. I've been with Interwest for about 9 years now. And I kind of got started in the industry as it started the downturn in California. So I don't know much of the good side of insurance in California in the good old days, but we've been doing our best to help our clients manage kind of what we're going through now. And the insurance landscape has changed drastically, I'd say, the last 5-6 years. And we're seeing it from a couple different reasons. One, just the increased cost of claims, and that's large jury verdicts coming out on liability side, vehicles, equipment, building costs going up. And with all these increase in costs associated with claims, insurance carriers aren't being able to get the rates that they need to stay profitable. And it's because of a big reason is just not business-friendly regulations that we have here. If we look at the rest of the country, California has the slowest approvals for filings. Takes 2 to 3 years for new rates to get filed or new policies to get filed. We're the only state in the country that doesn't allow reinsurance pass-through, meaning when you go place a policy with Nationwide, Zenith, whoever it is, they only cover the first layer of coverage, and they go buy separate reinsurance, which has gotten incredibly expensive, sometimes to the point where the reinsurance they have to buy is more than the total cost of premiums that they're allowed to collect, which is just driving carriers out of the state. And they're also not allowed to look at future catastrophic losses that may happen when they come up with the rate filings. So at the end of the day, it's less carriers in the state, less competition, and it's really driving up the prices. If you go to the next slide, Robin. So really, for the people that have insurance or can get insurance, the number one thing to do is to keep it. And that's 1, pay your bills on time. 2, comply with all the recommendations. So when you get recommendations from carriers, especially on wildfire mitigation, clear the brush, make sure water is accessible, put up water tanks, anything you can do to stay on their good side and not get non-renewed is huge, because once you get non-renewed, finding a alternative is getting almost impossible. We're seeing a lot of ranchers taking on more risk, looking at what they have insured on the policy, what can they self-insure, what kind of deductibles are they comfortable with. We're seeing a lot of people increase their deductibles. And unfortunately, what a lot of other ranchers are having to do is to break up their farm packages that they have, where we used to just have everything, your auto, equipment, property, liability, all together. A lot of these carriers, whether it might not just be wildfire risk, but they're not comfortable with other parts of the risk, whether it be if you have any kind of public exposure, certain types of leases on your policies. So we're having to put farm liability somewhere, auto somewhere, property might have to go with the fair plan. So we're able to get creative when we're coming up with solutions to get everybody covered. But the traditional farm package or ranch package is kind of dwindling, especially once we get up into the foothills at all. Go on to the next slide, Robin. So really, kind of what I mentioned, what carriers are looking for is they're looking at the brush clearance around structures. That's kind of their main thing. When they get a application into underwrite, the first thing they do is they're going to look at the address, and they have their own wildfire maps that they go off of. Each carrier has their own map that they like to use. I'm not always a big fan of the maps they use. They don't always make a lot of sense, but their reinsurance carrier and their company doesn't let them deviate from what this map tells them. So being able to show them pictures, bring underwriters out and show them that, hey, we have this kind of clearance around buildings. We have this kind of fire mitigation in place. We have dozers on property where we can cut fire lines if we need to. All that goes in kind of a narrative that we'll send to show how your guys' buildings are less at risk than guy down the street, and so they should insure you. Keeping buildings up to date, fresh paint, new roofs, even if it doesn't seem like it's gonna really help with any fire mitigation, just keeping buildings looking nice goes a long ways with insurance carriers. And they'll even ask you, hey, can you just slap a new coat of paint on here, just so when they sell it to their managers that they look like really good buildings. Putting in ponds, water tanks, and having them accessible, making sure fire departments in the area know how to access these water tanks or ponds. We've seen a lot of carriers asking for certifications or letters from fire departments saying that they've been out there, they know that their equipment can hook up to whatever water storage you have in place. And then the big one is loss history. Whether or not you have a lot of property losses, auto losses, carriers are getting pickier and pickier by the day on what they're willing to insure, and being able, in that narrative that we give them, to tell them how you're a good risk, the steps that you take, really is what's going to help you obtain insurance in California, if you can at all. I know this is all kind of doom and gloom. Hopefully we have some things in the process with a legislator and whatnot to get more carriers involved in the state, but for right now, this is kind of what we're looking at. And Robin, you can go on to the next slide. So with a lot of carriers leaving or getting non-renewed and having to go surplus lines markets or find other alternatives, you run into different valuations of buildings. So where we used to have every building, replacement cost on everything, you're starting to get quotes back or new policies that have actual cash value. And a lot of people might not know what the difference is and how that affects when a claim does happen, how that's going to affect your payout. So on a replacement cost, if it has a little RC by the valuation of the building, it means they'll pay to replace that building up to whatever limit you have listed, no questions asked. That's just what the money that you'll get to replace that building. If it has ACV or actual cash value, which is getting more and more common, especially if the buildings are a little bit older, they will pay whatever the value at the time of the loss of that building is, factoring in depreciation. So they'll look at when was that roof put on, when was new siding or new paint added to this. And if that's a 10-year-old roof with a 15% lifespan, you're going to see a pretty big depreciation on the actual amount that they're going to give you. So looking out for what kind of valuation has can kind of help you expect what kind of payout you'll get. Some other things you'll see is there's something called extended replacement cost. We'll see that mainly on owner-occupied houses, main primary dwellings, where you can get 125, 150% of the limit that you have listed to cover extra expenses that come with full rebuilds. And what we're starting to add on to quite a few, mainly barns, is the functional replacement cost. So say you have a 70-year-old redwood barn, and if you were to rebuild that with something of like kind of quality, it would cost you $200,000-$300,000 to get redwood and rebuild it that way. But a lot of ranchers are like, well, if that burns down, I'm throwing up a metal building or something that's going to cost a lot less. So being able to just add a lower limit, functional replacement cost to buildings is helping clients find insurance where they otherwise that building might get excluded for the type of building it is. So it's just things to think about and talk about when you're going through your list of buildings, how you want to list them. If something happens to this building, what are you going to do to it or do to replace it? Find ways to save money because these premiums are really getting out of hand. Next slide, Robin. So where a lot of people are ending up having to go is the California Fair Plan, which is getting a little bit better. When it first kind of rolled out and they had an influx of people going to them, it was 2-3 month waiting periods to get a quote back, and non-renewals were coming with 60-day notice, and we couldn't get them policies from the Fair Plan in time to get them coverage. They ended up with lapses. So we have to go to all other insurance carriers first before we can submit to the California Fair Plan. And then when we do get a quote from them, it's very limited coverage. You don't have any liability coverage, so we'll have to get a separate farm liability or DIC policy to get your farm liability, which you'll need on any of your grazing leases, any leases that you have, equipment rental, anything you need a certificate for, you're going to need liability coverage. But that's not included in the Fair Plan. The only thing you're getting from Fair Plan is your fire, lightning, smoke, and then you can add vandalism for an extra charge. So you have to get what they call a difference in condition policy to kind of get a Fair Plan policy back up to what you'll see in the standard market. There are some limitations on what they can do for a home. They can't insure anything more than $3 million, which we haven't run into that too much, but that seems to be adequate. And then for commercial or farm buildings, it's a $20 million max, which they just increased that, I believe in March. It was down around $5 million, but they're able to increase the amount to 20, which has been more than enough for 90% of the people we've had to put into the Fair Plan. And they are very strict on their recommendations. So if the only way the FAIR plan cannot give you insurance is if you don't comply with something they tell you to do. So if they come out, they'll have to have somebody come out on site and inspect each building. If they tell you that you have to put on a new roof, you have to take this tree down, you have to get 5 foot of clearance from this brush. If they say you have to do that, you have to do it. And if you don't do that, they'll send somebody back out to verify all the recommendations. And if they aren't complied with, they will send a non-renewal notice in 30 days. So it can be very expensive, some of the recommendations that they give, but you just have to comply, especially because we know if you lose that insurance, there is nowhere else to go. But there are some things in the works with carriers and the Department of Insurance to kind of ease some of the pain that the carriers are feeling. One is to allow that pass-through of reinsurance costs to the customer, which 49 states do allow. That will get more carriers involved. And then that forward-looking rate filing, when they're looking at future catastrophic losses, they're trying to get that pushed through. The Department of Insurance is listing out some requirements that carriers need to comply with to get those benefits, such as writing more stuff in the wildfire areas, not lowering their non-renewal notices to a certain percentage. So there's kind of a back and forth between the Department of Insurance and the carriers on how they're going to both kind of come out with a reasonable outcome. But we should be seeing some stuff come down the pipeline probably in the next year or so on some regulation stuff. But the biggest thing you can do is how do you mitigate your risk with products like these fire mitigation, different things? How do you make yourself look like an appealing risk to these carriers? Show that you care, show that you're being proactive, and then putting that all into narrative, sending it to the carriers, and hoping they give you a quote back. And if not, just be prepared for California FAIR Plan and all the things that go into that. But that's kind of where the insurance market stands in California right now. It's not all that good of news, but it's the reality we live in. And Robin, I don't know if any questions came in through the chat during that little spiel, but I'm happy to answer any.
Yeah, that was really good, Braden. Thank you. One question I had for you to jump in first is what carriers are still in California that you're working with on farms and ranches?
So we have Zenith Agribusiness, we have Liberty Mutual, CIG, Travelers. We have Nationwide on existing accounts. So Nationwide was the largest insurer in the state for all farms and ranches. About 3 years ago, their farm department stopped writing any new business in California. And every time we ask them if they're going to kind of start taking applications again, they say, oh yeah, we'll start taking applications for the best of the best risks, meaning if you're not in the middle of the Central Valley with no losses, they aren't looking at you. But, and even so, we're seeing big reduction in limits from the carriers that are staying here. So Zenith, Philly, Travelers, where we used to be able to get large policies in place with a $5 million umbrella, they all cut back to $2 million max, so having to go surplus lines for things. But then other carriers that left, they're just pushing so much business and so much, the capacity is so small with these carriers that are still here and willing to write business, where they're trying to diversify from the wildfire areas, but all the applications they're getting are all from these non-renewals in these wildfire areas. So that even the carriers that are still here, we're not seeing a lot of success with them writing new stuff. But there's probably 4 or 5 good farm and ranch places that we still send to.
Well, that's good to hear. That's something. And then what about umbrellas? Are ranches still able to get multi-million-dollar umbrellas?
They are, but they are getting very, very expensive. And we've been going through this with quite a few clients where they have leases or contracts that require a $5 million umbrella, but Zenith or whoever is giving them 2 million max, and to go get a 3 million over that is unaffordable. So it's still out there. It's very expensive to get depending on what you're doing. If you have any kind of public exposure on the property, weddings, dude ranches, that kind of stuff, hunting, that really makes things expensive. But we have seen some success in negotiating with the landowners or the contract holders to tell them, hey, we can't get these kind of limits. If we can get a 2 million, will that satisfy for the contract? And we have had some success in just getting new requirements through contracts to take the place of a $5-6 million umbrella.
Wow, how interesting that that's the answer, is to actually lower the liability required. Interesting. Good deal. Well, we might have some more questions come in later, but we'll go ahead and move on to Stuart Mitchell, who's joining us. He is a wildfire mitigation advisor, and I think he'll have some really good information and ideas for our ranchers. So here you go.
All right. See if I can share my screen. Can you see that, Robin?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me. Great to be with you all today. My name is Stuart Mitchell. I'm a certified wildfire mitigation specialist through the NFPA, and I have been looking at many, many different types of properties for quite a few years now. HOAs, ranches, estates, homes, remote homes. And so my primary mission is really to reduce risk to the occupant. And number two is to reduce risk to the home or the property. Number three is the insurance issues. So I do talk about insurance when I'm on site, and I'm advising people on how, number one, to have situational awareness. So I'm going to be talking about a number of things today regarding those issues. The way I do it is I spend time with the homeowner or the occupant and educate them about all the important aspects regarding wildfire, what the priorities are, what they're not, site specific to their property. And then we look at the property together, and I'm making notes and documentations, and then I send a summary report. So it's an objective analysis of the property, and I don't report to anyone except for the client. I have written letters for clients on behalf of them to the insurance company, and I've got some good success with that. Can't always guarantee that, but I can definitely guarantee that I can help people reduce risk to themselves and to their property if they take the proper measures. So my slideshow, I have a few slides here of different images. One of my slides has a lot of information. There's going to be a little short video, very short video. And then at the end, I have a slide with some QR codes for people who want to learn more around these topics. So again, appreciate being with you, and I'll just get going. And I'm glad it's being recorded because I may be talking pretty quickly about a lot of different things. And I'm always willing to answer questions in our course today and in the future. So CAL FIRE and other agencies like to use this framework called Ready, Set, Go. And I also appreciate it because it's encouraging people to prepare their property well in advance. So months, years, weeks in advance. Those are the times you want to do things like learn about fire weather. So fire weather is a really, really significant aspect when it comes to preparations around your property. Why is that? Because it's giving you lead time in advance of a red flag. So you often hear about red flag alerts, but fire weather is reported by the National Weather Service well in advance, often 1 to 3 days in advance of a red flag alert. So case in point, Lahaina in Maui, the National Weather Service told Lahaina, you have fire weather coming to you, not 1 hour, not 1 day, but 4 days in advance. So if they had decided to evacuate, you would have saved 100 lives. It was an extreme weather event. The town, unfortunately, would have been destroyed, situated as it was. But getting that fire weather information early, signing up for your local official alerts, and also signing up for watch duty. You see the watch duty QR code on my slide. Most people are getting connected with that now. I know Michael, who's on the call with us today, is a big advocate of it. It gives you geolocates where the wildfire is located, and it updates you on the status of that fire. Are assets coming in? Is the fire moving at a high rate of spread? Are they putting it out? Also, you might see smoke and you might wonder, is that a wildfire? Watch duty will tell you that it's a prescribed burn. So many of you know about watch duty. I just really encourage everyone to sign up for it. It's free and it's an essential tool in our toolkit. And you can zoom out, look at all of California. You could look at 20 other states. They're now in Hawaii. So during the ready phase, months in advance, you want to work with your neighbors. You want to start hardening your structure. You want to do your defensible space. And you're really getting an understanding of how advanced timing and preparation can really be a game changer. You know, one of the things that's already been confirmed from the fires in LA, and by the way, a lot of the things I'm going to be talking about are transferable knowledge to other people you may know. It's not all surrounded around ranches, but I do obviously have you in mind. So after the LA fires, they did some after action studies. And one of the things, and I have a picture of an example of that, but one of the things that they found that literally burned down part of a home was something very mundane, and it was a trash can. So before you're evacuating, that's a game changer, right? So Braden talked about different measures that you can take. There's a lot of intangibles that are really, really important that aren't often recognized by the insurance carriers. And stowing away your combustible items, putting those trash cans in the garage. If you don't have a garage, you can be strapping those very tightly and moving them away from a structure. Those are things that gather embers and gather debris, and they're combustible as well. So that's during that sort of set phase. So ready, months in advance. Set is the warning phase, where you're tightening things up, you're buttoning things up, you're closing things down, you're creating access for the potential of firefighters coming, and you're sort of putting out tools for them potentially if they show up. You have an extension ladder, you have rakes and shovels, you have garden hoses, or you have other suppression tools available to them. So when they pull up, and hopefully they can find your place, a lot of people assume the local guys will know where you are, they know what you have. That's not always true. The local law enforcement or firefighter will have the gate key or the gate code. Not necessarily true. So I encourage people to leave their gates open. If they don't want to leave them open, if they have that armature, that they allow someone to be able to jump over the fence, a firefighter, and release that pin to open up the armature of that gate. These are the kinds of things that are very helpful to them, that helps them respond better, have better clarity of mind, reduces traumatic stress for them, and it just really helps everyone. So you're creating an environment that's welcoming to them, that's encouraging to them. They're triaging, they're looking at homes saying, yeah, that one's good, that one's not good, right? And they're making a prejudicial judgment based on observation. So signage is something I really am an advocate about. I have a slide to briefly mention that. I know a firefighter who has PTSD from just that. They couldn't find the home and the child died. So having that dual-sided metal reflective signage on the road, and then guidance to the property, because a lot of rural properties have these turnouts and roads here and roads there, it's not so helpful. So having directional signage, sometimes even saying, you know, my home is 3/4 of a mile this way, you know, that really helps them with their access. But what I'm really guiding people around is creating ultimately a property that's self-defended, because as we know, firefighters can't be everywhere all the time. So that's a little bit about ready, set, go. Of course, go is the order to evacuate, and you want to continue to button down things. You want to create access, do all those things that are really helpful to them. I realize that many ranchers are very skilled and trained around a lot of different aspects. And there's going to be people thinking, you know, I'm not going to leave. So I would say that generally I don't advise that, and that's where Komodo can come in, and I know Rob will be talking about that in a few minutes. If the person hasn't done their the physical modification of their vegetation, they haven't gotten to it, or they didn't want to, or maybe you have a winery, or you just want to have all that foliage around your property. If you have the advanced warning, right, around fire weather and watch duty, and you have a warning stage, which could be a few hours or a few days, you could apply Komodo to your property as an extra augmentation. It's not a substitute, in my opinion, for doing that field modification, but if you're in a pinch, it's a good just-in-time approach. So those are the things that we can keep in mind when it comes to ready, set, go. I did mention signage. This is a few images. The image on the left is a pyrocumulus cloud from the Park Fire. I know some of you guys are living up in Butte County and Bahama and Plumas and whatnot. And so I went up there to do some, assist some evacuees and do some prepping of properties and such. And so the signage issue is super important. I wanted just to hold this up. So it's a metal reflective sign that has icons, right, that can tell a firefighter, you know, there's clearance on this driveway, they have water suppression assets, there's someone who has a medical condition, they have farm animals and whatnot. So signage is super important. The image on the right on this slide is simply a photograph of a gate that was burned in the fire. So if we had 10 of us, it'd be pretty hard to open up that gate. We could break it eventually, but the point is slowing people down. So leaving the gate open before you evacuate, I recommend. If not, allow that gate to be released because you're slowing law enforcement and firefighters down. Here's a couple images from the 2020 glass fire in Sonoma County and Napa County. You know, the typical roof line with the gutter full of fuel. You see trash cans right there, right? You think, well, what's the big deal? Well, that can be a big deal. So again, buttoning things up and stowing things away. The middle image is very common. That's a massive rosemary bush with wood chips underneath it, underneath an eave, next to a window. The worst combination. As we all should be learning, the 0 to 5 foot zone is the highest priority in terms of mitigation. So we work top down, structure out, not forest in or neighbor in. The forest is important to manage. The neighbor is great to work with, but let's be honest. Who can we work with best? Hopefully ourselves, right? It's hard to convince the insurance carriers, the fire agencies, the neighbor, the forest, how to behave. We can control and radically improve the survivability of our home and our ranches and our structures, whatever they might be, by working structure out. So that is the highest priority. 0 to 5, 5 to 30, 30 to 100, and in some environments, 100 to 200 feet out. Embers, as we're learning, are a big component of what burns down structures. So there's an entity called the Institute for Building and Home Safety, IBHS, and they, for many years, have done a lot of studies in terms of experimenting with embers, burning down buildings, etc. And their studies show 80 to 90% of structures that are damaged or destroyed in these events are caused by embers. While I'm thinking about it, one of the QR codes that I have for you to check out in the future, if you like, it's a film called Elemental, Reimagine Wildfire. And it's a documentary that was done a few years ago. It focuses on the campfire in Paradise. It focuses on structure hardening, the science around that, and it talks about prescribed burning. But we really need to work structure out on our properties, maintain that vegetation along evacuation routes, around calming zones, temporary refuge areas. Maybe Rob will mention this. Just a heads up, Rob, that I'm learning more about that, right? So what are these? These are areas where people can go and have more safety around them. Firefighters look for safety zones or temporary refuge areas, but now, publicly they're talking about, hey, if you can't get out, at least go to a place like this. And I have a reference that I can forward in the future. But again, embers are a big component here. And the image on the left is just showing actually a very, very expensive estate that had redwood siding. And I looked at it closely and I saw that it was starting to split apart. That's where an ember can land and ignite that building. A little tiny ember. Some of them are the size of a grain of rice. The image on the right is the undersiding of a low deck. So you got extremely steep slope. You have embers that could be flying underneath there. You have debris, you have vegetation, you have stored items. So I said, let's remove all those items. Let's get all the weeds cut out and let's screen it with fine metal mesh. Wildfire defense mesh is a great product that contractors are using to enclose the lower edge of decking. That's a game changer. And so now I think I have this very short video, and it was filmed at a fire fair that I attended last year, and it was conducted by IBHS, and they're demonstrating a hardened structure, cement board, 0 to 5 foot zone has been handled, etc. And then a typical structure with wood chips, vegetation, and less hardened material. So what happens is firefighters ignite that area and they do turn on a fan a little bit, and you see how one, burns to the ground. Additionally, that hardened structure has a metal connected fence. That's a fuse. A lot of homes out there, even in rural areas, have a wooden fence connected to the home. That's a fuse that needs to be replaced in that 0 to 5 foot zone at a minimum with something non-combustible. So these are things that are really important when it comes to good outcomes. Before I start it, there's an image in the middle that is pretty fascinating in my view, and I'd like to see if anybody can very quickly, maybe Rob, I'm going to put you on the spot. Rob, what do you think that that image shows in the lower right hand corner of that middle image?
Broken sprinkler.
Nope. So we'll find out. So let's play the video and then I'll let you know. I'll see if I can do this.
Climb the siding's igniting on the side of the structure, so it's going to climb that wall and get up underneath the eaves, and this one's going to progress through the structure.
Yep.
You see what a little influence, had we not turned the fans on and created a little bit more wind, it would take more time for the fire to get to the structure.
It would have taken more time, but again, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when it would have progressed and then lit something that is combustible on fire. It's all about connectivity.
So what's interesting about that video, there's a number of things. Like I mentioned, they put a drip torch down on the wood chips in front of the hardened structure. Of course, it wasn't going to ignite because you had that 0 to 5 foot zone of non-combustible zone. On the left, you have a structure that has plastic gutters. Believe it or not, that thing blowing in the wind is a gutter. Eventually, that whole structure catches on fire, and that iceberg-looking object is actually the window. So the building burned down, the vinyl frame melts, glass pops out. That happens a lot. So after that heat hit that glass, it literally formed a little iceberg. Pretty fascinating. The image on the right just shows a gutter drainage spout that's on fire. It's plastic, it's on fire. So again, showing how hardening can really be a game changer. So here's my slide with all my QR codes. If someone wants to take a minute to zoom in on a few of them, that'll jump them to that website. So watch duty, I talked about before, National Weather Service, I talked about as well. Komodo, Rob will be going into that. And the United States Green Building Council is a nonprofit that I teach classes for free. People can learn about how to prevent wildfire on their property. And there's 2 classes, one for construction professionals and one for landscape professionals. And it's just focusing on wildfire prevention. The Elemental documentary, which I mentioned before. And then there's a new documentary done on the LA fires, and it shows some really good footage about what occurred there. And again, with that fire and many, many other fires, we're learning that they had advance notice. In fact, Cal Fire sent me and others an email 3 days before the LA fire saying we're sending 50 engines and 7 hand crews down to LA. Why? Because the fire was predicted by weather. They had essentially no rain, and they were predicted to have Santa Ana winds. So I'm not trying to point blame, I'm just pointing out situational awareness that millions of people were told on the news that we had low rain, high fire danger, and winds coming. So again, my mission is to help people not get hurt and not lose their property. And there's a lot that can be done with this knowledge. And I also wanted to mention a group that's in my summary report. By the way, I list a lot of references and educational material, including a group called the Halter Group, halterproject.org. They help large animal rescue operations, and there's a lot of them out there across the state. Last thing, and I'll wrap up. This relates to Braden. There's a local contractor in Santa Rosa called BW. It's a licensed contractor, BW Builders. And what they focus on is estimating the rebuild costs. So as Braden knows better than I do, the mass majority of people are underinsured when it comes to rebuild. So what they do is they will do a deep dive analysis on what actually the coverages should be, and they can actually push back post fire and say, we did an even deeper dive, and we want to argue that, you know, the coverages, we were way under covered, and they can present an argument. So instead of $250 a square foot for rebuild, it was actually, you know, $550. So they're a great resource as well. And with that, I will take questions or whatever comes next.
Sure. So I'm going to jump right into Rob to make sure we have enough time.
Okay.
And then we'll do questions for you and Rob and any others that come in for Braden at the end, if that's all right.
Sounds good.
Okay, Rob, why don't you take it away?
All right. You guys see that?
Yep.
Cool. So I'm Rob Latham. I am the business development manager, director of operations, enterprise account manager with Komodo Fire Systems. I wear a lot of hats within that organization. A little bit of my background, just so you know, I am not a scientist. I am not a chemist. We have very much smarter people than me, as you can tell, as I just stated that. My background is I got 13, 14 years as wildland firefighter running heavy equipment. I run dozers, excavators, masticators, things like that, water trucks. Came across Komodo about 3.5 years ago. Saw a video of how the product works. Went, that's cool. It doesn't work that way, but that's cool. And they actually brought me out and put flame to product and showed me it actually does work that way. So that's kind of my background. Komodo is a brand new technology to the wildfire world. Completely eco-friendly, non-toxic, plant water-based, biodegradable, non-corrosive, non-abrasive, pH of 7. Everything that's in it's actually kosher. It's holy. It's kind of revolutionary in the fire world of having a product that actually works and is not going to kill you or make you sick. There's lots of stuff out there that work, but they say, hey, don't touch it, don't breathe it, don't do it. This stuff, you can take a shower in it and it's not going to bother you at all. We are one of 2 companies in the world that are listed and accredited through the USDA's QPL. A lot of people don't know what the QPL is. That is the Qualified Product List. That list is owned and operated by the USDA and the U.S. Forest Service. In order for any public entity to use a product on public lands, whether it's a park, a national park, forest, anywhere, it has to be a QPL approved product. We filed for our accreditation in 2018. It took 4 years and cost millions of dollars. We got final approval in October of 22. We couldn't sell a drop of product before we got that approval because basically you're unvetted. They don't know what you are and how it works. So we've been tested. We've gone through the qualification process, and now we've been in business selling product for about 3 years now, 3.5 years. It is a very, very unique product. I always revert back to, my time in a dozer. The best way I can describe this product to people, it's like spraying a dozer line out of a hose without scarring the earth. And you're not killing whatever vegetation you're treating. It's also safe for animals and people. And so if you're spraying it around your livestock and, you know, we don't recommend spraying animals to try and protect them against fire. But if you spray the ground and they come back in and they're doing some grazing or whatnot, the deer come in, dogs come in, and they eat that vegetation, it's not going to hurt them. We kind of have, this is slide right here is kind of our pinwheel of industries. We don't just do wildfire. We've got sectors with military and law enforcement. Currently selling product to the U.S. Secret Service, to the Army, the Marine Corps, the Navy's looking at stuff of ours, both domestically as well as internationally. We have our big enterprising customers, PG&E. Everyone's very familiar with PG&E in Northern California. They've been using our product for 3 years now on wildfires, and they have a 100% success rate. Every single asset or piece of infrastructure that they've sprayed with Komodo, even with live fire infringement, has been free from needing repair or replacement. Last year on the Park Fire up in Butte County, I think Stuart showed a picture of the cloud or the smoke column. They sprayed over 8,000 poles, and they had over 3,000 of them impacted by wildfire. And they did not lose a single asset that they treated with our product. And they like it because obviously they get customers back in service quicker. The cost of repair of their infrastructure grid is greatly reduced, but it also keeps roadways open because you don't have power lines and poles down. And so the emergency crews as well as evacuation routes remain open in those areas that they treated. We do some work with the semiconductor manufacturing industries. We have vendor applicators that for a service, think of like a pest control service, they can come out and they can pre-spray for fire, whether it's every 4 months, every 6 months, once a year. They can come out. We have people down in LA after the incident in LA. They made a business out of it, and he's got customers. He's got a lot of customers. He goes out every 4 to 6 months and he just sprays, whether there's rain, whether there's fire, whatever. He goes in there all the time as a service fee and sprays around these homes and protects them. During those fires, we actually had probably about 25 different crews down in the LA area spraying homes, protecting those properties with Komodo. We sprayed over 330 homes, something like that. Not all of them were actually in the fire area. Some of them were like one canyon over, or, the fire just didn't make it to their area before it changed direction. So they never were impacted. So it's kind of one of those, hey, did Komodo help or not? It was still that extra insurance. However, we did have about 24 of them that the fire burned through their neighborhood. And out of all of the homes that we treated, we didn't have a single report of any home receiving any kind of damage from that fire. I've actually received a phone call from one of the deputy chiefs with LA City Fire when they were doing their damage assessments. He came across this home where the fire just burned completely around it and it was untouched. And he asked the homeowner, how'd you guys do this? And he simply said, well, we sprayed Komodo. And he's like, well, what the heck is that? I've never heard of it. And he gave him my card. The guy called me and, I introduced him to the product. And I even made a pretty bold statement to him, said, if you had one water tender or a water truck full of our product and you take it down to PCH, all those homes that you saw burning along the beach right next to each other, the one that's on fire, you're going to lose it. It's gone. It's sad. But if you spray your exposures you could have saved over $100 million in real estate with one truckload of Komodo. And he thought I was kind of, boosting our own ego a little bit and kind of exaggerating. And I shared a video with him of standard OSB lumber, wood chips and glue pressed together. One of them treated, one of them not treated. We put a 900-degree alcohol fire 1 inch away from it for over an hour. The untreated crumbled and burned, turned into ash. The treated, it blackened, it charred, because that's how Komodo works, but you hit it with a hammer and it was structurally sound. So Komodo works. It works all over the place. It works on all these different industries. We're in Canada protecting solar fields. We're in Arizona. I was just doing a demo there for solar industries. PG&E's using it. Nevada Utilities looking at it. Pacific Power up in Oregon's looking at it. Tech up in Wyoming's looking at it. Arizona Utility, SoCal Edison, SDG&E, LADW. I mean, I can name them all. They're all have interest, and I've been conversations with all of them because of our 100% success rate. Every one of my accounts or my customers that uses our product and they're trained on it and they deploy it properly and they mix it properly, we don't have a single failure to report. So the product is pretty amazing. These are some of our accreditations. Obviously, the USDA, the QPL, the Forest Service. We have Cal Fire certifications. We've gone through all the testing. We very much we're very meticulous in how we qualify our product and our ingredients. We have a saying, it's benign by design. And that's on purpose. Our CEO comes from the semiconductor manufacturing kind of world. And so he's used to the hazmat and all the chemicals and all the things. And his whole point of it is, if I have to pay to bring it in and it's a hazmat or if it's even questionable, I have to pay to get rid of it. So we don't even entertain that idea. So everything that's in it is very, very safe. These are just some pictures. PG&E, they wanted to kind of distinguish themselves away from the other very well-known product that falls from the sky. They were on the Dixie Fire. And the fire service has started really adopting ground applied retardant when they can't fly because of inversion layers or whatnot. What they do is they bring out an army of water trucks. They fill their trucks up with retardant and they drive along the road and they spray it. Well, that traditional product is not an environmentally friendly product. And so you can't spray it around waterways or estuaries or environmentally sensitive areas because it'll hurt the fish, the tadpoles, and all the things. Well, the guy driving a water truck doesn't know all these rules, and they were just spraying it as they drive down the road, going over bridges and creeks and whatever else, spraying product. They blamed PG&E because PG&E's color was red at that time. So they wanted to distinguish themselves. So we made theirs blue to match their truck. So anytime you see a PG&E truck out there spraying a blue product out of a hose, that is Komodo. The other picture there just shows that, Komodo is a very versatile product. You don't have to have a fire engine. You don't have to have, specialized equipment. There are certain pieces of equipment that do it much more efficiently. But bottom line is you can put it in a water truck, like the one that you see there where they're side spraying it and creating a line and just drive around your ranch or your property or your field or whatever you want. And as far as your truck can spray, that's how big of a line you're putting in. And that's however fast you're driving, that's how fast you're putting that line in. So it can be much more efficient and quicker than, say, cutting a dozer line or doing something like that. Throw it in a water truck, drive at 10 miles an hour, and spray a 60, 70-foot swath. We also have systems. This is our Fire Ready 911 system. We have the capability of putting multiple reels on this system. We can also increase tank size and capacity of this system. It is a completely standalone unit. It's powered by a Honda gas-powered electric start engine. It runs a diaphragm pump, and it has anywhere between 300 and 500 feet of hose. And like I said, we can put multiple reels on there, so you can have 2 guys spraying at a time. You can mount it in a truck like you see there. You can mount it on a trailer, or you can put it on the side of your house and use it very similar like a Generac generator. You only turns on when you lose power, keeps your air conditioning, keeps your lights on. Well, if you got a wildfire threat, you got this on the side of your house, you can very quickly fire it up, spray around your home, spray your home, and evacuate. I know most ranchers in my area where I live, just south of Yosemite, they don't have evacuate in their vocabulary. And so a lot of those guys, as much as we don't advocate staying around and fighting the fire unless you are trained and have the proper equipment and tools, this thing is amazing at suppressing fire. Komodo by itself is over 20 times better at suppressing than water alone. And the beautiful part about it is whatever you suppress, it won't rekindle, it won't reignite. And so if you have a system like this, you can run around catching spots. You put in a big line around your fields and you just kind of sit back and wait, because that main body of fire is not going to come. But I don't care how big of a line you put in, you're always going to have spots. You're always going to have some slop overs, and you can have a truck out there with this system. And as the spot goes, you can run over to it, catch it real quick, put it out, and know it's not going to spread. Again, we do not advocate staying behind and playing firefighter, but I know a lot of guys are going to no matter what.
Hey, Rob, can I make a quick comment? Just
Yes.
real quick, just to underscore what you're saying is that Komodo is a long-term retardant, right? So it will tolerate, my understanding, Rob, is 3 to 4 inches of rain. So with, what Rob just said is like apply it early and don't be there, right? That's the ultimate goal. And that's the advantage of having a long-term retardant that's going to tolerate, 4 or 5, 6 months of weathering.
Yeah. And so that is one thing with Komodo, unlike other products, wet or dry, it works exactly the same. It will last until you get 4 inches of rainfall, whether that's natural rainfall or somebody there with a hose to wash it off, or irrigation, landscaping, that kind of a thing. Water is the only degrading factor when it comes to Komodo. If it stays dry, it stays working. The only caveat to that is if you're spraying it on vegetation and say it's been 6 months, you haven't gotten any rain, but you got 10 inches of growth, that bottom 10 inches of new growth needs to be treated, because if you only treat the top, the bottom's still going to burn. So WDS is, Braden might recognize them. They are a insurance asset protection company. So they're one of the largest private wildfire companies or departments in North America. They're last year moved into Canada, so they're up in Canada now as well. They have over 500 trucks and crews. And what they do is they monitor the fire weather, and they pre-position crews depending on what the fire weather and the severity is looking like. And all they do, they don't cut line, they don't try and suppress the main body of fire. All they do is they have a huge database with all the addresses of their insurance clients, and they do structure protection, and they try and mitigate that risk for that company. If the neighbor's house isn't in their database, they don't really care about the neighbor's house. They care about the one they got a contract to protect. They also have been using Komodo for the last 3 years. And again, they have a 100% success rate using Komodo. So we have a proven track record with some very reputable companies, very professional firefighting agencies. The stuff works, and it's pretty amazing. This last one is the airdrop. We are not in the air right now, but this is where we're heading. We have 2 products in the QPL process right now. By the end of this summer, for sure, by next season, we should have 7 to 10 air bases dropping Komodo on these large wildfires. The USDA recognizes it's a much cleaner, much more effective formulation than what they currently are using. And they're really, really pushing hard for us to get in the air, because they want to utilize that technology and put it to work. So that's kind of a brief overview of Komodo as it is. I know I probably got a lot of questions and how can we deploy it here and how will it apply to here. I know we got some limited time today, but I know Robin is going to share my contact information. Please feel free to email, call, whatever you want to do. I'm happy to talk with all of you and help get you guys some solutions.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rob. That was really great. Yeah, so I'm just going to put up here real quick. This has a discount. I also put it into the chat for everyone. And as I said, there'll be an email coming out next week that has everyone's contact information, a recording of the webinar. So if there's anything you missed or anything you want more information on, Braden, Stuart, and Rob were kind enough to say, absolutely, share our information. Anyone can reach out and ask questions. So we really appreciate everyone taking the time today to join us. I really appreciate Rob, Stuart, and Braden. That was some great information. And I'm sure as everyone thinks on it and digests it, there will be more questions. I know I have a few that I wrote down. Last thing I want to share is that Stuart and the CEO of Komodo were on our podcast. So if you go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you find your podcast, Tuned Into the Land is the California Rangeland Trust podcast, and their most recent episode has them on it. And Stuart shared a really interesting story about how the Watch Duty app was created that I did not know, and that was really great to learn. And he also talked about some other stuff like leaving sprinklers on if you're evacuating and other interesting info. So be sure to check that out. All right. Well, thank you all very much. And I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon. Michael, sorry, did you have anything you want to add?
No, Robin, this was great. Thank you, everybody, to our panelists today, of course, but then everybody for participating.
Thank you. You all have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.